In a couple of weeks, we'll be releasing an episode that we did with Gary Chapman. He's the author who wrote The 5 Love Languages. One of the 5 love languages is gifts. And this particular love language I do not have at all. I am a terrible gift giver, which is why I love Backgate Prayers. They are the sponsor of today's episode. If you're watching on YouTube or on Spotify, you can see the cards I'm holding up here. I usually have them behind me. I look at them every day. They are custom prayer cards that you can put a picture of your family or your kids or you and your wife, and they will write out custom prayers for you and your family or your kids. These are beautiful, biblically based prayers. They're also they look really good in your living room. Many of the Dad Tired guys have used these as gifts for their parents or for their wife and for the grandparents. They just make such great gifts, and they're always a huge hit. If you want to get these, you need to place your order right away in order to get them in time for Christmas. Make sure to go to backgateprayers.com. Use the promo code DADTIRED, and you will get a discount on your order. Such a great and thoughtful gift for people in your life. Hey guys, welcome back to the Dad Tired Podcast. We're glad that you're here. If you're just jumping in for the first time, we are a bunch of normal guys who are trying to figure out what it looks like for us to be the spiritual leaders of our home, to lead our families well, to fall in love with Jesus so that we can help our families do the same. We believe here at Dad Tired that strong families begin with healed men, and so we're just trying to find our own healing so that we can show up again to be the husbands and the fathers that we feel like God is calling us to be and that we personally want to be for our families. And so that's what we talk about every week on this podcast. We are in the middle of a 7-week series. 7 Steps of Discipleship is what that's called. And we are on step number 6, which is how do you have intentionality with your kids? If you're listening to this podcast, you probably clicked on it because you want to be a better dad. But this is actually step 6 of 7. It's pretty deep in the list. And the reason we do that is because we think there are a lot of other prerequisites that come ahead of time before you can actually be the father that you want to be and the best version of fatherhood that you can give to your family. And so if you've missed any of those previous steps, if you're just jumping into this for the first time, it's a really good conversation. I brought my friend Jeremy Pryor in, and he has tons of wisdom to talk us through this step. But again, if you're just jumping in for the first time, you go ahead and listen to this episode, but make sure you go back and listen to all the previous steps so that you have a full understanding of what we're trying to do here. That being said, let's dive into today's episode. Jeremy, I'm always super excited to hang out with you, man. You've been on the podcast a number of times, and every time I sit down with you, man, I feel like I'm sitting down with a sage. So I just feel like I'm honored to sit with you and pick your brain. I have all kinds of things that I want to start off by picking your brain, but before we get into all that, for those guys who maybe have missed our conversations in the past, just give us an update on who you are and what you're up to these days.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a father who fell in love with fatherhood in an unusual way. So I was not excited about having kids. I saw this sort of role as a father, just something that was kind of broken. I grew up in the Seattle area. I just saw so much divorce, so much brokenness. I had a profound transformation in my understanding of fatherhood by spending time in the Middle East around Jewish and Arab fathers. And they were so inspired by the example of Abraham. And so I came back to the States, got married to my wife, who we actually met in Jerusalem, and we started having kids. And I had this epiphany, which is I could build a multi-generational team, like the kinds of families that I saw happening in Jewish families and Arab families, and that were kind of common throughout all of history. We have this really new way of thinking about family. I think of it as like a springboard for individual success. Like, we just launch our kids out. We don't live multi-generationally. We don't think multi-generationally. We don't think like a team. We don't think like a household. We think much more like, okay, everyone's an individual, and then the whole thing sort of self-destructs after about 20 years. And I just wasn't excited to build a nest, to build a self-destructing community. So I got so excited about the idea of building a multi-generational team. So we had 5 kids, and now, 27 years later, we've got 3 grandkids, another one on the way. My third daughter, she is due today, actually. So we live in a 4-generation house. I work with my kids every day. My son and I work together. My 2 son-in-laws started a business together. We launched ministries together. And so we live and have experienced the fruit of this multi-generational team version of family, which is the kind of family that 95% of the world has built throughout history until very recently, and it works. And so we're here just kind of wave the flag and say the Bible from Genesis to Revelation talks about family in the same way, multi-generational team. We have decided, not only as Western people, but also as Christians, to adopt this experimental new idea of family as a springboard for individual success or as sort of a nest, and it's not working. And so we're just telling guys, it's not that the design's wrong. The family design is solid. It's amazing. It's beautiful. And the role of fatherhood, mother, sonship, daughterhood, these are incredible things, but we're basically building it using the wrong blueprint. And when things fall apart, it's sort of predictable based on what we've decided before you or I were born. Our culture, both Christian and secular cultures, decided to adopt a new novel blueprint ever since really the Industrial Revolution about 150 years ago. And man, does it not work. And so we're here to tell you guys, there's another way.
When you say it's not working, I agree with you, but I'm curious, what specifically are you thinking of? Like, because some people might think it's working fine. I raise my kids and we get them off to college and now they have great jobs and we see them at the holidays and they're successful and happy and they've got their own families. And sometimes we visit them. I'm talking as a potential grandparent,
right?
Yes. And they say that works fine. Why would you say it's not working? What is not working in your eyes?
Yeah. So I would say the idea that like family is designed to be functional is kind of a punchline in our culture. So because so many people are experiencing a breakdown in family design, and the U.S. is the number one country in the world when it comes to single parent homes. We've never seen anything like it before. We just passed Sweden, which used to be the number one. So the destruction there's always exceptions. There are always people that have basically through, kind of Frankensteining together something that's actually functional. They're like, hey, it's working for me. I admit that happens, but they are increasingly the exception. We have, a massive divorce rate. Our divorce rate is close to 50%. You know what the divorce rate is in India, where they still have a classical idea of family? 1.5%.
Wow.
So that is crazy to me. And that's more normal historically. So what we're experiencing, we have, it's sort of like the idea that we're swimming in these waters. And so it's normal to us. Yeah. We're seeing people get divorced left and right. Maybe our family is somehow the exception to all those rules. But even that, I would say, and this is something I especially am excited to talk to fathers about. I think there is something about the modern Western family that repels or frustrates most men. And I was definitely in that category. Had I kept the idea of family that I had when I was growing up and given to me by my Christian culture, I think I would have been a dutiful dad. I would have tried really hard. I mean, even your podcast, Dad Tired, is sort of like an homage to the idea that the way we're doing it is exhausting all of us. And there's a reason for that. And so if you could find a way out of that, which is what most people are trying to figure out, how can I opt out of this exhausting, frustrating experience? That has not been my experience. I'm just telling you guys, I find family to be the most meaningful and rich thing I've ever experienced. And it's really not because we tried to, it's not because we're kind of unique personalities. There's actually, again, this is why design is so important, right? What is that famous saying that your whatever you're building is perfectly designed to give you the results that you're getting. In other words, like when you're getting bad results, usually you need to go back to the design. We've refused to do that in this one area called the family. We're continuing to say it's repeatedly creating divorce, repeatedly creating issues, even generational divides. Thanksgiving, we just had Thanksgiving. It's sort of that's also a punchline in our culture. Oh my gosh, how do we get through this, difficult experience with extended family and in generations. When I was in Israel, I watched this crazy phenomenon, which was every Friday night, everyone was streaming to their parents' houses for Shabbat dinner. People in their 30s, their 40s with their kids were going to grandma and grandpa's house every single week, not once a year to try to somehow grit your teeth through this really annoying experience. It was this is the highlight of all of their weeks. They know how to do multi-generational family. So I would say, and the last thing I would say that is most important to me is that the Bible advocates for this idea of family. If you look at the very beginning, the first time we're ever given the idea of family, it wasn't our idea, it was God's idea. And he says in Genesis 1, when he created the first male and female, he gave them a mission: be fruitful, multiply, fill, subdue, and rule. And that's a mission that can only be accomplished by a family that's designed to be a multi-generational team on mission, because he gave them a mission that was multi-generational. They couldn't subdue and fill the earth in one generation. And he gave it to them, so they're a team. So if you're this idea that let's just create these families to be springboard for individual success. If everybody's happy as an individual, Yeah, that is the goal, and there are people that are succeeding in that goal. Like they're creating happy individuals that are, flourishing and successful as individuals, but they're still not giving God what He ordered from the creation of the family, which was a team that works across generations to accomplish a mission.
It's a beautiful mission and call that God has given us. I think even one of the things I would add to that is even in the example I gave where maybe a grandparent says, I've raised my kids, they went off to college, they have a successful job. I still meet many grandparents in our church and in our community who they don't have the most joy. They actually, you can sense a kind of subtle sadness in them that their kids are just gone and that they don't get to see the grandkids that often. And eventually the way it plays out is they will probably end up in some kind of nursing home and really lonely. And in fact, my wife is a nurse, and she does some nurse advocacy for some of the older population here. And oftentimes this population is dying lonely.
Yes.
So that's one ramification of how it could be failing. The other ramification is now you have the son and daughter who have become in their 20s and 30s, and they have kids, and the grandparents kind of have a role in raising that kid, but not really. And it's really exhausting. Like you were just talking about, like the mom and dad don't really have help, which I don't think is ever how most of the world has raised kids. That's like as a single single mothers and dads just trying to do that by themselves without the village.
That's right.
And so these are just some other ways I'm thinking of, like when we say it's not working from the outside, you might say, well, they have successful jobs and the kids and going to a nice school and all this stuff. But when you kind of dig under a couple layers, it's like, well, is it actually successful? The grandparents are lonely. The parents feel lonely. The kids don't actually know the grandparents. They don't understand that they're part of a bigger story. And so I think as you dig in and slowly and you press in a few layers, like you can see, like, I don't know if this is actually working at all, even from a secular perspective, if you just looked at it that way. Hey guys, just a quick heads up that our once in a lifetime father and son Alaska trip is almost full. If you've been wanting to find a sacred space to bond with your son, to get him away from the screens and the noise, to put him right in the middle of God's creation, this is the trip that you want to be part of. We're going to go off grid in June 2026. There's going to be hiking and fishing, worship, intentional conversations, rite of passage stuff. All of it is designed to help shape your son into the man who God is calling him to be. Spots are super limited for this. We only have 5 left, and registration closes in January. So make sure you click the link in the description to sign up and get more information.
100%. Yeah, I think that you have to gauge the success of the family based on its intended purpose, not necessarily am I happy or are we able to economically survive? Like that's not the purpose. The purpose, like God said in the beginning, was to be fruitful, multiply, fill, subdue, and rule. People, we have a fertility crisis. It's kind of amazing. Every single developed country in the world is now below fertility rate. We're not even fulfilling the most basic command or blessing or purpose of the family, which is to multiply. And this is a problem, for our generation, but it's going to be a complete disaster for our children and our grandchildren's future. And there's like a self-centered kind of narcissistic culture, and the family was a huge part of what was designed to overcome that. And so part of this is just basic character formation. Like when fathers listen to this, and anybody who's listening to this as a dad, what you're doing, I think, is so noble and so important that you are trying your best to try to figure out, how can I bless my family? How can I make this work with my wife? How can I make sure that I'm raising my kids? This is what is shaping your character. Fatherhood is God's curriculum for our discipleship. And so we want to embrace this and say this is a really good thing we get to do, and that is doing our Father's work in our hearts as dads as we go out and try to build these kinds of families. But I feel really bad for dads because oftentimes they are building with the wrong blueprint. And so even if they succeed, they end up creating this incredibly fragile nuclear family that's designed to self-destruct and do all the things you're describing, basically create isolation the older you get. That is so weird. I don't know if you guys know how historically and how geographically strange that is, that in other cultures, the most relationally rich time in your entire life is when you are in your 70s, 80s, 90s. There was a friend of mine who I was getting to know, and his whole family was from India. And he was describing how his grandfather, who was 90 years old, was there in their house for 3 months, and he was a 15-year-old kid when I was talking to him at the time, and he was like, this is my favorite part of my whole year, was hanging out with my grandpa, even though we speak different languages. He's like, just being with him. So I asked his dad, I said, hey, can you tell me a little bit more about it sounds like your dad, who's in his 90s, is living with you guys. And he's like, oh yes, my dad had 5 sons, and we all fight over who gets to spend time with my dad. And so each of us, all 5 of us immigrated to America, all 5 of us have a special room for my dad. And so in order not to get each other jealous, my dad has to move around to the 5 different brothers, his sons' houses. And we all just love that. Is normal. I want you guys to understand what he was describing there is not some weird exception. That is the normal way that your life should end, completely surrounded by the people who love you and who you love the most. That's a basic family design. You don't have to be some radical Christian to come up with that idea. That is just the way family was designed to be a gift to all of us. And as Christians, especially, we should have the tools for forgiveness and for reconciliation and for closeness. But we, even us as Christians, we're not experiencing that kind of family because it's not because we're not as relationally skilled as people in India. We're using the wrong blueprint. It's so important people understand that when you're designing or creating or building something with the wrong design, you can be really diligent and you're still going to be exhausted and you're not going to succeed an enormous amount of the time just because you're using the wrong blueprint. So we've got to get our heads and hearts around the way God designed family to be. And he did not design families to be this one generation, a self-destructing nest. He designed it to be a multi-generational team that works together, lives together. And we've given up on that because we desperately, as a culture, want isolation. David Brooks says that when Americans become wealthy, they purchase loneliness. It's by design. We want to create, and we are on the trajectory. If you're just a typical American, you are on the trajectory towards isolation. And this is why in this conversation, Jared, I got so excited that we're talking about being an intentional dad, because this is the only way you can combat this trend. You have to actually make proactive decisions to do things that are going to be really hard and that's going to take you down a different road. That's going to make you a little bit unusual in the culture. And you got to embrace that, because the father is the one person designed to take that hit and to succeed at that. And you guys have what it takes, but it's not going to be easy.
Mm. I do want to pick your brain on the new blueprint, or I guess I should say the old blueprint that we need to go back to. Yeah, but before we get into some of those practical stuff that you're describing, I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on just the population crisis, like the very real ramifications of that model, the blueprint leading to less children, and as a result, there's kind of quiet murmurings among people who are saying, like, this is a very real, like, there won't be countries here if we continue on this. And along those same lines, I don't have social media anymore, but my wife told me, like, the phrase DINK, what is it? DINK, yes. Dual income, no kids. Mm-hmm. And then somebody said they combated it. They said we're trying to start a new something called SILK. Yes. Single income, lots of kids. Yes. Yeah, lots of kids, which I thought was so cool. And there is kind of a, not to get us too off track here, but there is kind of a cultural shift I am noticing among the Gen Zers, the college age people, who are actually going back to traditional values, which is super cool to see. Yes. And it's being led by men. Yes. It's like these young women who are like, I want to be a mom and I want to be a wife. And these young men who are like, and I want to provide for you and I want to be a solid husband. It's just like, it's really beautiful.
Design wins out. That's one of the things that we're seeing in this Gen Z generation. They see the destruction that happened to previous generations, and they're like, well, what do we have? And so that's what's great about design. One of the things that's tough is when you leave the design. One of the great things about design is it's got its own gravity. In other words, you can see that it doesn't work when you try the other things. And all of a sudden, when you look around and see people with flourishing families, people with happy marriages, you see, they're all, there's some basic principles they all have in common. And so what the Gen Zers are noticing that, and thank God.
Yeah. And I'm just, this is totally different side tangent, but you have some Gen Zers as children.
I do. Yeah.
And so you could probably speak to this and see it more clearly, but they are making some pretty cool shifts that, I never wanted to be the old man that looked back and say, well, this generation's lost. And, I'm actually really proud of the Gen Zers and what I'm seeing, and especially the young men, the way that they're stepping up, which is really, really cool.
Yes.
All right, man. Well, let's talk about some of the blueprint, because I know guys are just like, all right, refresh my memory or tell me for the first time, what have I been missing as I've been reading the scriptures? For the dads who are here and really do want to have that kind of life that you were describing, where they have this multi-generational family and that they're by God's grace on a deathbed one day, and they're surrounded by their sons and daughters who love them and are carrying on the legacy of their life. Like, where does a guy begin to understand this blueprint?
Yeah. I always like to say, it starts with ideas matter. And so you have to start by really understanding that the ideas we have about family that we take for granted are relatively recent. And you have to start to have a vision or a picture of this sort of biblical or ancient or classical family. You can use any of those words because they're all the same kind of family. In other words, there was a normal, basic way of doing family that we were always designed to do family like. And there's lots of nuances to that. There's lots of ways that you can express that in unique ways, but there are basic elements to it that I think need to be preserved. And we're at the tail end of an experiment with destroying every one of those roles and defining anything that anyone would say, whether it's the Bible or culture, anything that's prescriptive about family. Hey, this is how a father should act. This is how a mother should be. This is what a family is designed to do. This is what a son, this is what a daughter is. This is what a man is. This is what a woman is. All of that we have labeled culturally as really an imposition on our total independent freedom. And so we pushed against anything that could feel like it's prescribed. And this has destroyed the family more than anything else. There's been this whole gender, debate that has occurred because we've defined gender culturally as a social construct. Like this is something that there's been a movement within sociology, within the humanities departments to say that gender is a social construct. For those of us who believe the Bible, we know that gender has always been a family construct. God created male and female to create a family. And so the way that you understand what a good man is you understand the way God designed a father to be. Or if you want to understand what a good woman is, what is a woman? It is best typified in someone becoming a mother. It doesn't mean that you are not a woman if you don't become a mother. It's the qualities that embody what it means to be the kind of mother that creates a flourishing family. That's the design around what is the feminine. And each of the stages of becoming a mother, becoming a wife, becoming a mother, becoming a grandmother, that whole journey from maiden to mother to matriarch, that's the journey of a woman. In the same way, a man goes on a similar journey, right? He starts to become a man, then he becomes a father, then he becomes a patriarch. And that's a beautiful journey that God's designed. It's incredibly powerful and helpful for children to thrive. And we do live in this age where, talking about intentionality, if you just go with the flow, you guys, man, it is so dangerous. I just wrote this article just called The Age of Intentionality because I began to see that there's going to be this weird divide that's already you're seeing emerge between people that are basically living life by accident and they're having their childhood destroyed by screens, and it's just wrecking people's attention. And then they get a little bit older, and then they have their identities blown up by social media. And then they get a little bit older and they get addicted to pornography. And then they get a little bit old. I mean, it's just like, this is the design of our culture. And the only thing I know that can stand between a child and these kinds of the tech companies or different people who are trying to turn them into a product that is going to, for lifelong, serve the interests of somebody who's trying to exploit them for the sake of money is a father and a mother. But definitely a father has the kind of steel in his spine to say, look, we're not going to do this as a family. And so if you don't live intentionally, there's going to be this crazy divide between children who were raised by intentional fathers and children who were basically raised by going with the cultural flow. And the divide is going to be enormous between, it's almost like one author on fatherhood described, the difference between what he called a dad deprived boy versus like a boy who has had a father who's been very engaged. So this divide's massive. And so part of what, I've been trying to help in particular, like how do we create the kind of fathers that are excited to engage and be intentional? I think that what I got excited, what really got me was when I began to see that building a family, God designed me to lead a team. And once I saw for the first time kind of why and how God like designed me as a man, things that were that I felt as I looked across at different men, as I was, beginning to mature, I'm like, oh, this is the reason why God has created men to be a certain way is in order to create a kind of father. And we're all designed to do this, but it was like you look around at all the families and you're having a hard time finding any models for this. And one of my favorite models, because you're not seeing it in families, is I started to study professional and college football coaches, because their lifestyle and their way of living and their way of leading is actually far closer to what Abraham did in the Bible than what the modern Western dad does. The modern Western dad is almost, this sort of emotionally distant, kind of often frustrated, and like trying to do his duty if he's really attempting to raise a good family, but feels like he's hitting it oftentimes in his work, but when he gets home feels like he's a little bit of like a fish out of water. It's just not really. And that was what was so weird for me when I was in the Middle East. I did not see that same pattern. And that's the first time that I realized that what I was actually experiencing in the West was cultural and not sort of foundational when it comes to being a father. Like in the Middle East, fathers are far more comfortable with the role. They've had dads, they've seen their fathers, and they've seen their grandfathers, sort of the patriarchs of the family. They told family stories. They got really clear about, okay, the dad is trying to lead the family towards a certain like goal economically, in their faith, in their ministry life. And so they're functioning as a cohesive team, and they're seeing these fathers really flourish in the role of fatherhood. And seeing that was just blew my mind. And I had to take a big step back and try to figure out, is there a way to do this in our culture, or do I have to move to the Middle East to like have this experience?
Yeah, I think what you're describing is a lot of guys feel that sense of they're looking for their purpose outside of their family.
Yeah.
I think most guys can relate to feeling like I feel kind of clueless when it comes to leading my family with intentionality. I know if I go to work, there's some KPIs, there's some objectives I can hit, there's some very clear measurements, and I can see if I'm successful or not. But when it comes to family at home, I think a lot of guys feel lost. And then what happens is they just say, well, my wife seems like she's better with the kids than I am.
Yeah.
And so you have dads who admittedly are like, I love my kids and I'm sticking around. I'm not going to leave my marriage. I'm going to cheer them on the best I can. But when it comes to like actually having their purpose within their fatherhood, that's where it's just like, I have no idea where to even begin. I think most guys would feel like, I don't even know where to begin. What does it look like to actually find my purpose as a man in my home as a father?
Right.
And so when you say, as you're describing this, like, there's something even in me as a man. It's like, I get excited. I'm pumped. I'm like, let's go do it. But as soon as I hit, turn off the podcast here and I go outside of this room and my kids are there, like, what do I do? Is it a mindset change? Is it rhythms? Like, what is it
does start there.
Hey guys, just want to jump in real quick and remind you that tickets are now open for our Dadology 2026 conference. This is our brand new 2-day conference in San Diego, and it's designed to help men heal, to reconnect with Jesus, to step into their role as the spiritual leaders of their homes. It's going to be a super practical conference, gospel-centered, and it's built to change families for generations. Spots are limited for this. Make sure you grab your seat by going to dadtire.com/dadology.
But yeah, I can tell you one story because it relates to your podcast, Jared. So a couple of years ago, I was on your podcast, maybe this 3 years ago, and there was a guy who was listening. And at the very end of the podcast, I think I had mentioned for some reason that I live in Cincinnati, and he was living in Cincinnati. So he was really enjoying the podcast. He was like, whoa, this guy lives in Cincinnati. He was working at a factory job. And so he emails me kind of out of the blue and says, hey, I just heard you on Dad Tired. Can we get together and, hang out? And I'd love to kind of pick your brain on this stuff. I was like, awesome. So he came and sat on my front porch, and his name was Joe. And so Joe and I talked about this. We were like, okay, and he said, he just kind of poured out his heart to me. He's like, look, I used to be in ministry, I decided that wasn't really my calling. And so then I got involved, but I know I still have a lot of ministry callings in my life. And so I didn't really know how to provide for my family. So I've tried a few things, and now I've got this factory job, and I know this isn't where I need to go. Like, I don't know what to do next. And so, yeah, he and I spent like literally the next 3 years together. And Joe, like, he came to work for me in a nonprofit. He and I are really, really close friends now. But I made a deal with him. I said, look, I'll let you come to work with me in the nonprofit because I do need the help of somebody with your skills. But I said, I don't think this is long-term best for your family. It might be best for me, it might be best for my ministry, but I actually would rather see you launch a business. So he and I made the deal, like in 2 years, you will start a business. And so, so Joe came to work with me. I kind of showed him, kind of step by step, a lot of the way we do family. And so he saw how we do our multi-generational meals. He saw how we set up rhythms with our kids. And so he started implementing this with his kids. He's got 4 kids. And so it's just amazing to watch. So Joe, started to implement this stuff in his family. He launched his business. His business is very successful. He's got multiple people like working for him now. They just moved into this incredible property. He started, part of what I coach people to do is start 3 kinds of businesses: a freedom business to get out of employment, a scale business to start making money in a way that isn't tied to your time, and then a legacy business. This is like, real estate or capital intensive assets. Anyway, Joe owns all 3 businesses now. He's got an amazing freedom business where he coaches guys who are launching pickleball court businesses across the country. He's got, an incredibly successful scale business in his actual pickleball construction company. And then he's got a legacy business, multiple rentals. Anyway, he and I work together now constantly on ministry and stuff. He's becoming financially free. His family is really thriving. So anyway, everywhere I go, when people
I gotta pause you. I gotta pause you for a second. One, that's an incredible story. I had no idea that happened.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. Cool on so many layers, like what's happening in his life. Cool that you took the time to actually sit at your porch and respond to that email, and that you poured your life into him in the midst of all that you're doing, which is incredible. I also know now you are going to get flooded with emails after you just shared that story. So I don't know if you need to change your email address or like duplicate yourself or what you can do.
One of the good things, if you guys do email me, I do get a lot of emails like this, and I take them all very seriously. But in order to take them even more seriously, which I do, because I have an enormous amount of passion for this. And when Joe reached out to me, like, my heart goes out to him and to all the guys who I know who are in this situation, because I know that they are, again, like we've been talking about, they're just working with the wrong blueprint. And these guys, they can totally transform their life. So anyway, my son works for me full time. And anytime somebody reaches out to me now, I'm like, you can book a free call with my son. My son is my advisor when it comes to how to like leverage my time best for the kingdom of God. And so sometimes, there's like, here's a tool, here's a resource, here's a next step. We'll help you out. And Jackson's amazing at coaching and can help you with a lot of things. He certainly has grown up and has living this. But there are lots of times where it's like, Dad, we gotta like, get involved here. There's something kind of for our family or for the kingdom. And so, yeah, I need help discerning so that, we definitely value whatever God wants us to do with our time. But
how old is your son?
He's 25.
Okay, so even that example, like so many of us, I think that's a very clear example of like this kind of multi-generational. You guys are doing ministry together, you're working together, you have this close relationship. He understands the kingdom, he understands business. And it's like, so many of us want that with our kids. And you have that. One of the reasons I love having you on is because you guys can listen to me. Dude, my oldest is 14, almost 15. I don't know what I'm talking about. Come to me 15, 20 years from now and see how my kids are doing and what my life looks like. But for you, like you're living it out. And so I think you have a lot of street cred. And so what were some of the rhythms that you started implementing? I know family dinners was a huge part of that.
Yes.
Understanding that you're helping your kids understand that you're part of this bigger story. Yeah. We are not just launching you out as an individual into the world, but you're part of this bigger legacy. But give us some put some flesh on these bones for the guys who are just like, dude, how do I get a son like that? How do I get kids to do what you're doing?
Well, you got to play really, really good offense and really, really good defense. And we've taken our hits, and we've definitely, like, our family is not perfect. We've had lots of challenges with our kids and with our family, but we are very unified. We see each other. I see all my grandkids every day. I see all my kids every day. I live a life I would not exchange with anyone for anything, but it has been challenging. Like, it's taken, a lot of intentionality, and there's been, major mistakes we've made along the way as well. But I would say some of the things that were really, really, really helpful. So we feast together across generations every week. There's a simple formula that I tell people: if you want to start a multi-generational family, I'll give you the formula that works. 3 generations, 1 table every week. If you pull that off at any point in your family's life, you will transform your family into a multi-generational family. I've seen this work over and over again. 3 generations, 1 table every week. Now, most people can only start with 2 generations, and that's okay. You've got you and your kids. But what you want to do is create the kind of meal every week with those kids, not the little weekday meal where we're catching up and then we all go off and do our own things. No, you could create that multi-generational meal, that meal where we have nowhere better to go, nothing better to do. We're going to share family stories. We're going to, bless the sons and daughters. The father is the father, sit at the head of the table. The mother is the mother. The sons are sons. The daughters are daughters. Everyone is experiencing their familyness at that meal. And your kids, as they're growing up, they will think, I cannot imagine. This is so awesome. I have a feast with my family every week. It's my favorite part of the week. We really focused on making it fun for the kids. When they were really little, we started with it was the one meal where we had sparkling grape juice, whatever. We just upgraded this meal slowly over the, 20 years that our family was growing up. And our kids were just so excited to have kids. And the way what they pictured when they thought about having kids was what would happen when they would bring their child to this meal. And eventually we ended up enfolding April's parents, my parents. And so there was even one moment where we had my grandmother for a month coming to. Wow. So she was spanning 7 generations of our family. She lived in Michigan, but then she moved down just before she died in her 90s. And so it was so epic. And so when my daughter had our first grandchild and my grandson, Elijah, had his first Sabbath dinner with our family, you cannot imagine the explosive joy in that room. There's about 15 of us around the table that are all part of this family, this multi-generational family. And we were seeing for the first time the next generation. Wow. It was like we had spent 20 years building up to this moment and preparing for him to come into the world. Wow. And that is the way that God had designed every family to feel that way. So again, I don't want to trumpet toot our horn. These are basic design elements that I think are normal that are being destroyed. So that is good offense, is like having amazing, feasts. We had, we have regular one-on-ones. One of the things that we are very adamant about is making sure that we stay very connected. Like we have heart connections with each of our kids. So April, my wife, literally, we have a family meeting every week. And at that meeting, one of the last things that we do is that she would try to discern, and she has some kind of superpower. A lot of wives have this ability to understand who's most disconnected from who right now this week in the family. And then she would assign us one-on-ones and say, okay, you two spend time together. You guys spend time together. You guys have been fighting. You guys hang out, whatever. And so she would always assign me one-on-ones, and she would know weeks or months before I would wake up to this reality that, hey, I think you're losing our daughter's heart right now. You've been feeling a little bit cold, a little bit disconnected. I know there are things going on in her heart right now she's not sharing with you. And so she would tell me that, and I would then go and spend time with that daughter. So that's good offense. Defense
so before you get into the defense, what did some of those one-on-ones look like? Because I've heard you talk about this before on the podcast, because even siblings were doing one-on-ones, right?
That's right. Yeah, we did.
Okay. Yeah. So what are the
one-on-ones? Yeah, this is a little bit of a skill to this. I mean, the skill of any good conversation is questions. Mm-hmm. And so I put a little freebie together for your audience. I think it's at familyteams.com/dadtired. There are 10 questions that over time I'm like, okay, these questions are just gold. Because even with a 5 or 6 year old, there's some questions in there that you can have a fairly deep, 10, 15 minute conversation with a pretty young child. If you have really good questions, so there's a bunch of questions on there that you can drill into things like it's really important to ask them questions about the family. Who do you feel most connected to right now? Who do you feel least connected to right now? What's making you happy right now? What's making you afraid right now? Just having in your back pocket as a dad, good questions so that you can be, having a pretty tough, distracted day and you're like, okay, I'm exhausted. I don't feel like I have anything left. You can ask a few good questions and get a conversation going. As long as you can dial into what's going on in the heart of your child, then you can really make up a lot of that distance very quickly.
Was it over ice cream? Was it on walks? Was it
a lot of it was we had different traditions. Walks are great. Jackson and I had we would go to this Smash Burger that's close to our house. We had a special spot we would sit. There's a cool ice cream shop really close to our house that I would go to with one of my daughters. So there's different traditions. I think it's really good to come up with a 15, 20-minute tradition with your kids so that you can, ask them some good basic questions, create kind of a space. And one of the best times to do this is if you're having a behavior issue with your kids. One of the biggest problems, especially when they're getting older, you want to be careful of this, where you may have to correct them, you may have to discipline them. There may be a process there, but you want to really understand what's going on in their heart. Just trying to force them to behave. that particular step sometimes is necessary to create some discipline so that it's not wreaking havoc for the family. But that's obviously not going to really solve the deeper root issue. And oftentimes we're like, well, I created peace. I did the thing, they got on timeout, got disciplined, or I yelled at them or whatever, they stopped. And now, okay, we're back to equilibrium. No, your job's not done yet. And so the best thing to do is the next day, take them out for like 10, 15-minute one-on-one in a very safe environment where you guys are used to being relaxed, where they know that you're not there to, yell at them or get them in trouble. You're there to ask them questions and learn what's going on in their heart, and just say, hey, sweetie, what was going on with that? Can you just take me back to that moment yesterday where you said that to your mom? What was going on in your heart right there? Like, what's happening? Like, you have to dial in and find out what's going on, because the enemy is coming after our kids. Like it says in 1 Peter, he's like a lion looking for someone to devour. He's constantly testing your family, trying to figure out where is the weakest link in this family and how can I exploit that to destroy this thing. And so if you know that, part of the basic design of a dad is to be a protector. But we talk about that almost exclusively in the physical domain. I think this is 90% of protecting your kids is in the spiritual domain. You have an enemy and he's coming after your children. And so you need to become both spiritually able to combat what he's doing, and then you need to actually get involved in the fight and sit there and work with your kids and find out what's going on and how is the enemy lying to them, because that's his primary tactic. He's going to try to tell them a lie, get them to believe it, and then cause there to be distance so that no one's asking them, no one's unveiling or understanding what's going on there. And that lie slowly starts to take root and destroys their identity, destroys their connection with you, destroys their connection with the Lord. And so, yeah, you got to be playing that good defense.
Hey, real quick, if your church has been wanting to invest into men, but you're not really sure where to start, we would love to come alongside of you. We're now booking our new one-day Dad Tired conferences for 2026. It is 4 hours. It's all built around our core message, which is strong families begin with healed men. If your church can host it, we can take care of everything else. You can learn more about how to host one of these one-day conferences. We do them all around the world. Find out more information, get the conversation started by going to dadtired.com. It feels obvious to say this, but the key to all of that has to be the initial mindset change. Because if my mindset is I'm just trying to raise a successful child who makes it out of this world and goes to college and gets a good job, then I will discipline differently, and I'll even have different conversations. I will need you to do, the best at school, and I need you to get your act together and figure it out. And I'm just pushing you in all the subtle ways toward that goal. Right. If the goal is legacy, mission, kingdom, yes. I want you sitting at my dinner table when you're in your 20s with your children. Yes. Then I'm going to have different conversations. I'm even going to discipline differently. Totally. But it's like just the simplest mindset change. I know that feels obvious, but I think that's a really big distinct. Like, I want my kids to sit with me at the dinner table every week and love being there. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. We had a very different set of goals for our children as they're becoming adults. There's two things I wanted from my kids. One is that when they were single, before they got married, I wanted them to be radical missionaries for Jesus. Like that's what we wanted. We didn't want them to go to college. If they want to go to college, we would support them. But we're like, we took 1 Corinthians 7 very seriously, where it says that when you're single, you have a gift, which is you can be wholeheartedly devoted to the Lord. So all of our kids basically went on the mission field, for long periods of time while they were single. And then we told them, look, the minute you get married, then, the mission is to be fruitful and multiply. Like they were all extremely passionate about having children early and often. Those are both radically strange ideas culturally in our day and age. But again, this is going back to design. We don't trust the Bible. Like we way more trust the story, the sort of American Western story, the American dream. We trust that 10 times more than we trust the words of Scripture. The Scripture tells us what to do when you're single, which is that you are radically on mission for Jesus, and it tells us what to do when you're married, which is to be fruitful, multiply, fill, subdue, and rule. So these are, and we still are, on mission to be radical missionaries for Jesus, but we do it in and through our home once we're married, as opposed to doing it out there in the nations. And that's the way that our family, we saw that in Scripture. We believed that Scripture was telling us the best possible design. But what happens if you follow that plan is your kids, they're 18, 19 years old, and they hit the mission field, and they start to really become radical followers of Jesus. Their character is being formed. They're winning spiritual battles in their own heart. They're able to engage in the kingdom. They're seeing all these different cultures. There's all kinds of amazing education that occurs. Now, people in our culture are going to be panicking. Oh my gosh, well, without a college degree, how in the world are they going to make money or whatever? And, we coach people how to make money. Making money in this economy, I think is there's so many amazing ways to do that as a family team. So our kids grew up, we've started 7 different businesses as a family. So our kids already have like the skills of an entrepreneur before they graduate from high school. So they understand how to do that. We're never worried about making a living. So they're out there being missionaries. And then when they're done with that and they meet someone, oftentimes meeting somebody as they're on mission, somebody who's also on fire for Jesus, and then they come back and they get married, and then they start having kids right away. And, it's another thing we tell kids, wait as long as possible to get married. After you're married, wait for a long time before you have kids. Again, like, we don't trust the design. We don't trust the designer. God could have designed that kind of a lifestyle. He didn't. Now, part of what our kids, they do have an advantage, which is that we have set everything up to help our kids when they're young to be able to thrive being young parents. And, that's something that you guys maybe didn't have, but you can give that to your kids. Like, today, I usually work with my wife every Tuesday all day. And so I was really excited coming up to today. We were about to, last night, and she's like, Jeremy, tomorrow is Sydney's due date, and so I don't really want to go work with you. I want to be here for her all day. And so I was like, okay, honey, like she is so dialed in. She's gone through doula training. And so we have 4 daughters. And so our daughters totally like rely on April, because this was what used to be normal, is that, now it's like, okay, I guess maybe you should wait until you're in your 30s. If you're going to be completely isolated, no one's going to help you. No one's going to help you with childcare. No one's going to help you like with delivery. No one in your family is available. I understand why this puts, young families into a terrible dilemma when it comes to these things. Again, we have to differentiate between kind of the broken culture that we're a part of and God's good design. And part of God's good design is having a mother a matriarch in the family who's very skilled at this. She's not only had 5 kids herself, but she's she went through lots and lots of training. She's got incredibly good relationships with her daughters, very good boundaries. Like, she knows how to support them. They want her in the delivery room when they're having the baby. I mean, but again, this is normal. And a lot of this has been disrupted by really, really bad ideas that we've received culturally and haven't combated with Scripture.
Yeah, it would make sense to tell somebody, wait till you're in your 30s to start having kids, because you're on your own. Right. You better make sure you get the financial means, and you got to make sure you got some help, because I'm not helping you. And some of it, which we haven't even hit on, is the parents, us, who will eventually be becoming grandparents, also being hyper independent and thinking, I'm going to raise you for 18 years, send you off, and then I want to live my own life. Yes. I want to go golf and travel and do my own things, and I'm not going to be, you're on your own. I think that's a huge part of it. And so I think what you're saying is, if my plan is that I'm going to be involved in my kids' life, like we're going to have this tight knit family on mission together for as long as I'm alive.
Yes.
Then yeah, go have babies, man. I'll be there. I'll watch the baby. I'll help you out,
Right. Yeah. You can lean into the design. I know that for some people, they're going to hear like that we're hyper controlling. Neither April and I we're not kind of control freaks. We're much more into story and experience than control. I don't want to control my kids. I've told all of my kids, you don't have to live here. We will support you no matter what God's called you to do. I fully expect God's going to call our kids to live in different places and into different things. But our identity is as a family team. And so wherever they go, we're going to do everything we can to support them. Our kids have lived in different countries and different parts of our country at different seasons. But yeah, in this season where they're a very fragile, new, young family, brand new marriage, new kids, new jobs and businesses, all these things, like, they're going to get a ton of support from us.
I appreciate that. That's a helpful clarity. You're always ready for the pushback, because I see all the negative comments. I used to see all the negative comments on your whenever I was on social media. People like to push back on all your ideas. It was kind of fun to watch. But
Yes.
I interrupted you, and we'll end here. You said defense, a solid defense. You talked about some of the ways that you can have solid offense. What are some of the intentional defensive strategies that a dad needs to have?
Yeah. So you have to understand that if the enemy is coming for your kids, if you just kind of go by default in any of these areas, and this is a harder time for dads and moms now than I think I've ever heard, in terms of how many different things come at our kids. whether it's social media, what's going on at school, like all these different portals that the enemy has. And so it's really important for you to understand that the portal problem, which we have in our culture uniquely, and it's kind of multiplying, is one of the greatest challenges of a dad's life. Is how do I help my kids when the enemy is trying to continuously open portals? Like the most egregious example is kids alone in rooms with screens.
Mm-hmm.
That combination is so destructive. It's not hard to imagine when you have an enemy who wants to destroy your kids, and your kids have access to screens alone in a room, and they can spend, hours alone in those places, that it's just, they're going to be discipled into who knows what kind of ideas. And so we're constantly talking to parents that are they're like, I do not know what happened to my kid. Like, and so this difficulty of playing really, really strong defense is getting more and more acute. And a lot of us are like, well, we look at our childhood and we're like, I don't know if I needed that much. But again, you have to understand, our kids are growing up in a different culture than even we grew up in. It was tough for a lot of us, but man, is it tough for them. And so you have to have proactive, intentional strategies for how to handle every one of these things. And I'm sorry, like that's one of the, like, I don't think we're not supposed to have to think about how do I somehow prevent my son from being able to see, porn at 10 years old? How do I somehow prevent my 12-year-old daughter from having her identity basically completely destroyed or transformed by TikTok? But this is the world that we live in, and we have to play good defense. Because if you are playing good offense, you're having amazing family meals, you're having one-on-ones, you're connecting with your kids' hearts. But if 5-10 hours a week they're being discipled by the enemy, you're not going to be able to combat that without somehow cutting that portal off. And so this is a very delicate thing that you need to be working through with your kids. And so I think having policies, like literal policies as a family, and what's the age at which it's appropriate for you to get this device or this app or have this experience? I think that one of the things that I just always want to raise a giant flag around is when people have default positions when it comes to schooling. I think that, like, our kids, we did about 80% homeschool, 20% public school. There are times where I think our kids were thriving in public school. Usually every 4 of our 5 kids did a year of public school. In high school, they all had amazing experiences in that 1 year. But man, a middle school girl in most schools is a disaster today. You can't imagine how hard that is on girls. And again, we had 4 daughters. None of them were in that environment. I had one daughter who was our oldest daughter, 7th grade, I put her into a public middle school, and it was like maybe 2 months into her time there. And I remember she was on the couch with me crying. She's like, Dad, I think I finally figured out what it is to fit in. And I think I know I don't want to do that, but I feel like now I have to. And I just like, what do I do? How do I help my daughter? And then the next day, somewhere around the next day or that week, a friend of mine from Portland, actually, who I hadn't seen in years, he said, Jeremy, I had the weirdest dream last night. I had this dream that your daughter was kidnapped. And basically like it was like a very dramatic prophetic dream. And I literally drove to the school. I read his email like something like 10 a.m. I drove to the school, got to the principal's office, said, I need to see my daughter. And, they pulled her out of class, brought her down there. And I said, honey, we're leaving. We just walked out of the school and never walked back. I'm like, told him, like, I am withdrawing my daughter from the school. And so I feel like you can't have positions about these things that put your kids in, they're your children. And so you need to take that very seriously. And so whatever defense you have to play to combat what the enemy's strategy is for your family, you have to have a steel of spine today as a father, a strong will, and saying, I am going to protect my kids and I'm not going to lose any of them to the enemy. And that's going to require some very countercultural moves.
We have we've homeschool all of our kids. We have one of them that just started in public elementary school. And we went on a 3-day vacation to Dollywood. and the school reached out and said, we are going to have to report you for truancy. Because of these unexcused absence. And we said, well, we excused it. Like we told you we were leaving. This is a family vacation. So we're the parents, we're excusing it. And said, no, that's not how it works. You
don't have the authority to excuse your child's absence. Yes.
I'm like, so you are my child's keeper. Like you are as the Mr. and Mrs. Government, you tell us what we can do with our children, what we can't. Hey, before we jump back in, I want to invite you to partner with the mission here at Dad Tired. Every episode we do, every resource, every ministry win, it all happens because of guys like you who give specifically. Just had a guy reach out this week that said he's been praying for a resource to help him as a husband and dad. And he found Dad Tired. He said he listens to 12 episodes in a day just because he's finding so much practical help for him on his journey. Your generosity helps men heal. It helps marriages strengthen. And it helps families change. You can give today by going to dadtired.com/donate. All that to say, we were pulling her out at Christmas break.
Yes, yeah.
I'll get all the emails. I'm thankful I'm not on social media anymore, so I won't get all bombarded with all the bad comments.
I had the same conversation with my daughter. She's doing her junior year of high school, the public school, and we've got multiple ministry trips we're taking as a family. And I'm like, I want you to come to these. She's like, Dad, that's going to push me past the allowed number of absences. And I'm like, okay, like we might have to have that fight, and then that might end up having you withdraw. But like, it's tough that the school assumes that we're going to abdicate that responsibility to them. It's like, what the heck? Never let school get in the way of your child's education. And that happens way too often.
Well, I'm all for you. I just know can be a controversial subject. Although the homeschooling has increased, I think like 50% since COVID. It's been insane how many people have gone over to that. All right, bro. Well, I think anyone who's listened to this conversation, any other conversations we've had in the past, they're realizing like I'm just scratching the surface of like your wisdom. And so just do an unashamed plug here, like where all the resources guys can go hear more about what you've got going, books, podcasts, all the stuff you have.
Yeah, the big paradigm shift, if you guys need to go through that or think through what God designed family to be, I wrote a book called Family Revision, How Ancient Wisdom Heals the Modern Family. It's on Audible. You can get it on Amazon. My partner in crime, Jefferson Bethke, he wrote a great book called Take Back Your Family. So my book kind of drills into mostly just the theology. Jeff's book gets much deeper into the sociology, what happened during the Industrial Revolution, why we think this way. So those are both really helpful paradigm shifting books. If you guys want to really get that heart connection going, I mentioned that we have a little free resource for you guys at familyteams.com/dadtired, and basically has my top 10 questions that I like to ask my kids during a one-on-one. So if you want to grab that, you can go over there. I think we have a podcast at Family Teams. We are on Instagram and other places, but I would love to see you guys. And if there's anything that we can do to help, I love what is going on here, Jared at Dad Tired, and we need each other. We need to like figure out how to help dads. I just want to say once again, dads, you guys, you can't imagine how critical your role is. And please, if you are struggling, if you are feeling, on edge, in this role, man, please hang in there. It's worth it. And man, God's design and his ideas for family is really beautiful. It's not just a duty. But I do think that some equipping can be really helpful. And if we can help in any way, we'd love to.
Yeah, man. Well, I miss you. It's good seeing you. It's been too long since we've got to hang out, but I really, really appreciate you and your friendship. So thanks for coming on, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Jared.
Hey guys, like we've done the last several weeks, you can get a completely free PDF where you can dive deeper into step 6, today's content that we went through. If you go to dadtired.com/7 steps, that's the number 7 steps. We will give you the PDFs from today's episode and all the other episodes that we've done in this series. Again, go to dadtired.com/7 steps.